Hi, my name is Narkis Alon. I'm a social entrepreneur, an author, and a mother. At home, I'm raising a 3-year-old boy, and I'm also pregnant. So in my womb, I'm raising a 29 weeks embryo of a baby girl. In my work, through my initiatives, I'm exploring the conditioning we have regarding gender roles and how we can break free and create new versions of ourselves for the new world economy. Today, I'll be sharing with you about it from my personal story as a woman, as well as the experience I have from my initiatives, working with hundreds of women leaders from around the world and leading Israel's largest community about gender roles. Even though my personal story is addressing my experience as a woman, I'm inviting the men listening to connect to the place where it resonates to your own personal experience, rather than falling into the dynamic of us versus them, which is exactly the dynamic we want to break free of. So let's begin. So as most men and women living in this planet, unfortunately, I experienced a lot of conditioning about my role in society. But the earliest memory I can think of was when I was 14 years old. I was in my friend's house and she called a cute guy from school. And naturally to 14-year-old girl's behavior, she put him on speaker and didn't tell him that I was listening. So in their phone conversations, they were talking about several girls from school and who could he potentially date. And then they reached my name and she was like, what about Narkis? And then there was silence and then he said, but Narkis doesn't look good. So it was a bit embarrassing between me and my friend, but then she quickly moved on to suggest other girls. And you know, I liked that guy. I thought he's really nice. And I remember that was the first moment I understood that I need to look in a certain way as a woman, and that is the way for me to receive love. So I was always an achiever, an A+ student, and I figured, okay, if looking good is the task now, I'll make it happen. So that's how I developed eating disorders. And basically, I was smart enough to not take it too further, so my parents won't be worried, but to take it further enough so I can answer the definition of being an attractive teenage girl. And actually my plan worked because after several months of barely eating, I started to receive a lot of attention from men. So one of these men was a guy that he used to be my counselor in the youth movement. And for me, it was like a celebrity, okay? And I remember that night in the summer camp that he invited me to join him in his hammock. And I joined, and I was 15 years old, and he was touching my body. And that was the first time a man touched my body. And I remember that all I could think of these moments was, how can I not ruin this moment? This is a dream coming true. So there was no single thought about like, is this pleasant? Is this pleasurable? Because this would be like, you know, talking to the 14-year-old that started to develop eating disorders and asking her, what is the healthy, natural weight of your body? Who cares? What I cared about was to succeeding in the tasks. So naturally what I could do is just freeze. So over the years, the same pattern stayed, but this girl on the hammock, the behavior evolved and developed to a more sophisticated one. So I was already able to move, but all of my different gestures when I was meeting men was according to their own movement, to their own expectations. So if you think about it, the education I got about how to be a woman basically was that I need to look in a certain way and I need to move my body in a certain way. And naturally, it was also thinking in a certain way and talking in a certain way. So, sorry. Basically, if you think about it, this is very similar to the way you think about a product, not a human being, because a product needs to sell so it can justify its right to exist, basically. And you don't really care about feelings and stuff like that. And that is the way I was thinking about myself. Now, with the same patterns, as I became a woman, I went into the workplace. And in the workplace, as I said, I was an achiever. So I was an entrepreneur and I built several initiatives, a few social initiatives and later business initiatives. And when I opened my first business and raised money from investors, I remember that the dynamic in the boardroom was very similar for me for the dynamic in the bedroom. So all of my energy in the boardroom, in the same manner, was invested, and how can I make my investors happy with what I'm saying now, with the ideas I suggest, according to reading their different facial expressions and body postures. Again, not what serve my business, not what my intuition or professional experience tells me, but how to receive their validation so I can feel safe in the same moment. Now, with exactly these patterns and these behaviors, I'm 26 years old back then, and we're receiving a call for applications from Google. The company I'm leading is an education platform to basically train people to work in the startup industry. And Google is sending a call for applications for a program that can redefine gender gap, okay? So we're submitting a program only for women entrepreneurs. And basically what we suggested was very simple: 3 days where women think all day long about their business, their product, their business plan, etc. With one thing that sets this program apart: we will remove all distractions for these women. So these women will be in nature with no cell phones and with no men, and they can completely focus. So we got the grant and we went to the desert and we took the first group of women. And as I said, the days were very intense. And I was very surprised back then. It was a turning point in my journey, because during the evening and the dinner, and then in the conversations later, almost all of the conversations of these women were about sexuality. Now, we're talking about 3 years before Me Too, so talking about sexuality in the workplace was just not a topic. And also in my personal life, even with my friends, sexuality was not a topic. So that was the first time I experienced very honest conversations about this. And I remember women talking about sexual harassments in the workplace, but also about troubles in their personal life, feeling disconnected from their body, feeling that they only need to please all the time, also with their partners, and a general feeling of disorientation when it comes to their body. And I felt a certain kind of comfort that it's like, okay, I'm not the only one. But then there were 2 women there in the group that really caught me with surprise. And that was women that talked about an experience of pleasure, okay? So there was one woman that shared about hours in which, her partner is investing in her pleasure, and another one shared that she is guiding her partner on how to touch her body. And I remember I was so shocked, because not only that it never crossed my mind to do something like that, even if I wouldn't even know what to say and how to guide, because I was so disconnected from the basic needs of my body. And I remember these women, there was something in them that felt joyful and very confident. And also it felt as though they have no resentment towards men. So in the conversations, when we were like, this investor did that, this boss did that, they were just not engaged. So reminding us, this is a professional network, right? And we finished the workshop, and then we had monthly meetups so we can be accountable for each other's success. We would meet, and each one would update on her progress. And really all the women decided to make big changes following this retreat. So some decided they're gonna quit their job and finally open that business. Others decided that they're gonna finally start to fundraise. And I decided that I'm gonna start to connect to my body and learn how to receive pleasure. So this man, I was already in a relationship with him. Today, he's still my husband, a lovely, beautiful man. And, we had our own relationship and intimacy. And imagine I'm coming to him one day and saying, what we had until now, it actually wasn't me there. I was playing a role play, a gender role play, and I want to start over. And I don't know how, but I want to find out. And the journey wasn't simple, because it meant going beyond some of my traumas as a woman. It meant feeling worthy of pleasure. It meant, starting to listen to my body, which I never listened to before. It included therapy, it included workshops, it included many, many things, a lot of steps forward and then backwards. But I can tell you, that day, the first time where I experienced pleasure was the first time I ever loved being a woman. I remember that day, I couldn't stop smiling. I remember myself standing in the grocery line, inappropriately smiling, and that feeling lasted for 24 hours. I felt productive like I never felt before. And it was a connection to a certain power and confidence that I just didn't know exist. Now, as I said, many steps forward and many steps backwards. So obviously this was a journey also after that first experience. But the moment I started following my body and starting to change the way I perceive the role of my body in society, instead of an object that needs to look in a certain way and move in a certain way as something to respect and listen to, it changed my whole leadership style. So it was the first time where I dared to open my own company and not just join someone's company and say, this is the vision, follow me. First time I was able to fundraise and able to say my real opinions in the boardroom. This is my co-founder, Sarah, that we opened together a separate company for this women programs that we're doing until today called W. And if you think about it, it makes so much sense, because if a person doesn't think the basic needs of his, her body is not important in the bedroom, why would this woman think her opinions are important in the boardroom? And more than that, why would she believe her ideas are important enough to engage people to follow them? So today in W, in our women program, we're not leaving these conversations for dinner or for the breaks. We have a whole module that is focused on giving women the space to listen to their body and connect to their passion. We call it the red tent, and we see it as a module that is important as in the same way, like knowing how to write a business plan and how to think about your product. Our community includes hundreds of women from 16 different countries, including executives from the biggest tech companies, entrepreneurs, investors, creators. So after observing this process of hundreds of women and seeing the importance of the connection a woman has to her body and her ability to make an impact in the world, I realized it's important to share this story with the world. And I wrote a book, which I published this year. A year and a half before I knew that the book is going to be published, I started to make this topic accessible, for people. And I realized this is not a simple topic to tackle, to talk about people, that there is a connection between the workplace and between their connection to their body can sound a bit hard to digest to some people. So I realized I need to start leading a discussion about it in a more formal way. So I opened a podcast and a Facebook group called Playing with Fire. Today, it's for men and women. It's today 11,000 men and women. And basically in this group, men and women share very openly about gender roles, about sexuality, about the connection between fulfillment and sexuality. There are many times very challenging conversations that show, the anger and the fear between men and women. And I learned a lot from leading this community. And the first thing I realized is something I wasn't able to listen to or to acknowledge that exists before, and that is men's feelings. So apparently I was so busy these years releasing myself from patriarchy that I accidentally, without noticing, muted all men with it. And that basically includes my colleagues, my husband, even my son. I was grasping men as this character that I need to be strong in front so they don't make me lose my voice again. And instead of, understanding that there's a human being behind it. So, I'm starting, after reading thousands of men in the last year and a half, sharing about their experience, I'm starting to understand men. So apparently men are also feeling disconnected from their body and called to repress their real needs and emotions. A lot of times women are talking that once we own our pleasure and our sexuality, we will reach equality in the bedroom. But today I'm thinking, equality with who? Because the masculinity that we're presented with in mainstream media is so narrow, and most men do not resonate with it. So basically, if you think about it, as men and women, we are all conditioned to repress our true selves and to participate in this role play that doesn't really serve us. We all have the need to feel powerful and worthy, and we all have the need to express our emotions and have permission sometimes to rest. So most people view gender as a binary concept, okay, with two rigidly fixed options. But a binary view of gender fails to capture its complexity. Masculine and feminine needs and possibilities exist within all of us. Once we're encouraged to explore the whole spectrum, it can allow us to experience a much richer life experience. What if we start looking at gender as a resource and not as a burden? A resource that can allow us to explore the different possibilities to just be in this world so we can fulfill our potential, experience things we never experienced before, and upgrade ourselves to new versions. I see several things that need to happen simultaneously for that. First, we need to do what we're doing now, which is women-only circles and men-only circles, to heal our wounds and conditioning and find our authentic selves beyond the burden of gender roles. I also see shared circles of men and women together, like we have in the community I'm leading, where we initiate each other, play with different archetypes, and transition from fear and violence into co-creation and possibility. In the last years, I've worked with big organizations around the world, creating safe spaces where men and women practice connections. The breakthroughs I got to see in these spaces showed me there is a movement of people ready to explore a new reality of gender. Data shows that today's young people have significantly different understanding of gender than previous generations. The rich diversity of gender has always existed. It is not a new phenomena, but rather a new conversation in which many of us are only just now engaging. Let's release the burden of gender roles and transform gender into a resource. With my partner, as I said, I'm raising a 3-year-old boy, and with my woman raising a 29 weeks embryo of a baby girl, and I'm committed to co-create a world that will allow freedom and expression to both of them. Thank you very much. Would love to continue the discussion.